When the news broke that Eric Dane had passed away at the age of 53, it did not land like ordinary celebrity news. It landed quietly, heavily, and painfully. For many people, this was not the loss of a distant public figure. It felt personal. Eric Dane had been part of living rooms, late-night reruns, emotional storylines, and moments of escape for nearly 2 decades. And today, before we go deeper into his life and legacy, it is important to say this clearly. We will also talk about what is known so far regarding Eric Dane's funeral and homegoing, because for many fans, that final farewell matters just as much as the story that came before it. Eric Dane's life and career were defined by connection. Over more than 3 decades in the entertainment industry, he built relationships that went deeper than professional obligation. He was known not only as a leading man, but as a colleague who listened, a friend who showed up, and a human being who never reduced himself to fame alone. When word of his passing reached the public, tributes did not begin with awards or box office numbers. They focused on character, on generosity, on the way he carried himself through joy and hardship alike. For many viewers, Eric Dane will always be remembered as Mark Sloan on Grey's Anatomy. The character was confident, charming, and emotionally layered, and Dane gave him a depth that allowed audiences to see vulnerability beneath bravado. Over several seasons, Mark Sloan became more than a fan favorite. He became a familiar emotional presence, someone viewers grew with, argued with, and ultimately mourned when his story came to an end. Eric Dane ensured that Mark Sloan remained human rather than idealized, flawed rather than distant. That honesty is what made the character endure. Yet to define Eric Dane solely by that role would be to miss the breadth of his work. His career spanned genres, tones, and decades. He appeared in romantic dramas, comedies, thrillers, and action films, always bringing a grounded quality to his performances. Even in roles that could have been played lightly, he chose substance. In later years, his work on Euphoria revealed a darker and more unsettling side of his range. The role demanded restraint, discomfort, and emotional risk. Eric Dane approached it with seriousness and care. Those who worked alongside him noted that he was never interested in playing safe. He was interested in playing truthfully. When news of his death broke, the response from the entertainment community was immediate and deeply personal. Sam Levinson, the creator of Euphoria, spoke of heartbreak and gratitude in the same breath. He described working with Eric Dane as an honor and being his friend as a gift. That distinction mattered. It suggested that beyond professional respect, there was a genuine bond built on trust, warmth, and shared creative purpose. Another powerful tribute came from Maria Shriver, who had been working closely with Dane on his memoir, Book of Days, a memoir in moments. Her words captured the bravery that so many recognized in him during his final year. She described him as heroic not because he hid from his illness, but because he chose to speak openly about it. He used his voice to explain what living with ALS was like, giving visibility to a disease that often remains misunderstood and unseen. Shriver shared that Eric Dane wanted his family to know how deeply he loved them. He wanted to leave behind something meaningful, something his children could one day read with pride. His memoir was never intended to be a farewell soaked in sorrow. It was meant to be a record of moments, memories, and love. Through that project, Eric Dane ensured that even after his death, his voice would continue to speak with clarity and purpose. A deeply personal remembrance came from Alyssa Milano, who worked with Dane during later seasons of Charmed and shared a close friendship with him in the early 2000s. Her tribute was filled with details that revealed genuine connection. She spoke of the spark in his eye right before he would say something unexpected. Sometimes it made people laugh uncontrollably. Sometimes it forced them to rethink everything. That spark, she said, defined him. Milano remembered his razor-sharp sense of humor and his love of the absurd, but she also spoke of a tenderness that emerged whenever he talked about his family. When he said the names of his daughters and his wife, Rebecca Gayheart, his voice softened. Even when they were not present, he carried them with him. Her words painted a portrait of a man who balanced mischief with devotion, humor with sincerity. She also shared moments that might seem small but carried deep meaning. Eric Dane encouraged her creative risks. He walked beside her during personal milestones. These memories mattered because they showed how he showed up for people he loved, not through grand gestures but through everyday presence and loyalty. The sense of loss echoed across Hollywood. John Stamos mourned a friend gone too soon, remembering their time playing brothers in Wedding Wars. His words were brief but heavy. Gone too soon became a phrase repeated often because it captured what so many felt but struggled to articulate. Ashton Kutcher reflected with a blend of humor and sorrow, recalling shared experiences before urging continued commitment to fighting ALS. Their connection, formed through work on Valentine's Day, reflected the camaraderie that develops when long hours and shared pressure turn colleagues into companions. Paul Walter Hauser offered one of the most raw tributes. He spoke openly about shared struggles, laughter through pain, and efforts to stay grounded during difficult seasons. He expressed gratitude for the chance to work together in Americana and sorrow that there was not more time. His words carried the honesty of someone who had walked beside Eric Dane not only during success, but during hardship. From Bad Boys, Ride or Die, Martin Lawrence shared condolences and described Dane as a true professional and a solid presence. He emphasized that Eric brought integrity and commitment to every project, regardless of role size or expectations. That sentiment echoed across nearly every tribute. From the Grey's Anatomy family, Kevin McKidd reflected on their years together. He praised Dane's natural charisma and distinctive comedic timing, calling their shared scenes moments he would always treasure. He reminded fans that Eric Dane would forever remain part of the show's legacy and its heart. As these tributes accumulated, they formed something larger than any single remembrance. Together, they revealed a man who was generous with his energy, honest about his struggles, and deeply committed to the people around him. One theme returned again and again. Eric Dane showed up. He showed up for his work, he showed up for his friends, he showed up for his family, and when illness arrived, he showed up for others facing the same fight. Eric Dane's public advocacy for ALS became one of the defining elements of his final year. By sharing his diagnosis openly, he brought visibility to a disease that often exists in silence. He gave language to fear, context to pain, and urgency to research and access to care. In doing so, he transformed personal suffering into collective awareness, offering strength to families who felt isolated in their struggle. At 53, his death felt sudden, but his legacy felt complete, not because he had done everything, but because he had chosen what mattered. He chose love over denial, honesty over silence, advocacy over retreat. He left behind performances that will continue to be watched and words that will continue to resonate long after headlines fade. As his family mourned privately, the public mourned alongside them. His wife Rebecca and his daughters became the focus of an outpouring of compassion and respect. People spoke not only of the actor they admired, but of the father and partner they respected. That distinction mattered. It reminded everyone that Eric Dane's most important roles were not only played on screen. As of now, no public date has been announced for Eric Dane's funeral or memorial service, and his family has requested privacy as they grieve. If and when such details are shared, they will mark another moment for reflection. But even without a public ceremony, the tributes make one thing unmistakably clear. Eric Dane's story does not end with his death. It continues in the lives he touched, the causes he championed, and the example he set by facing his final chapter with courage and grace.